The photographer said there were pictures from my wedding I was never supposed to see. I laughed at first. I mean, who says something like that after 7 years of marriage? But when I looked into his eyes, that laugh stuck in my throat. He wasn't joking. He looked scared. Before we continue, if you enjoy true stories that start ordinary but spiral into something you'll never forget, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Anyway, I hadn't seen Mark, our wedding photographer, since the day he handed us our album. He spotted me at a local coffee shop one random Thursday morning. I almost didn't recognize him. Older, tired, like someone who'd seen too much. He hesitated, then said, "Hey man, can we talk about your wedding?" At first, I thought maybe he just wanted to pitch me some anniversary shoot or something. But then he said quietly, "There are photos I didn't give you back then. I think you should see them." I remember the way my stomach dropped. It felt ridiculous to feel that way, like a cold wave crawling up your chest over some old pictures. But something in his tone made it impossible to brush off. He didn't sound like a salesman. He sounded like someone confessing a sin. We met that afternoon in his small studio, tucked behind a florist shop. He pulled out an old hard drive, connected it to his computer, and said nothing for a long minute. The hum of the machine filled the silence. Then, finally, he clicked open a folder titled Unedited Raws, Miller Wedding. I leaned closer to the screen as he scrolled through hundreds of images I'd never seen before. They weren't posed shots. They were behind the scenes. Guests laughing. My groomsmen goofing off. My bride, Emma, being helped with her veil. Normal stuff. Until it wasn't. He stopped at one photo, then another. His fingers trembled slightly as he clicked at first glance. It looked like Emma standing just off stage at the reception hall. But then my eyes adjusted. She wasn't alone. There was a man, standing behind her, holding her waist, whispering something in her ear. Her face, that same smile I thought was meant for me, aimed at him. Mark said quietly, "I deleted the rest back then. I didn't want to ruin anything. But there are backups. And you deserve to know." I stared at that image until it blurred. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe an old friend. Maybe just the angle. But the way she leaned into him, the way his hand rested like he'd done it 100 times, it didn't look like a mistake. It looked like muscle memory. Mark told me he'd noticed strange things that day. Her slipping away between sessions. The best man covering for her. An argument between her and the event planner he'd overheard near the service door. He thought it wasn't his business. But he'd kept those files all these years, just in case that I left his studio with a flash drive in my pocket and a storm inside my head. I drove aimlessly for an hour before even going home. I played the day of my wedding on a loop. Her nervous laughter, that one phone call she took by accident, the way she disappeared right before the cake cutting. Back then, I thought it was just stress. Now, it felt like something else entirely. That night, while Emma slept beside me, I opened the drive on my laptop. There were 27 photos, all taken within the same 30-minute window I couldn't remember clearly. Every one of them showed her with the same man. Same hand on her back. Same smile. Different angles that I zoomed in on his face. Familiar. Too familiar. I'd seen him before, but where? It wasn't until I opened the next folder that I realized who he was. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't even on the invite list. His name popped into my mind like a ghost, breaking through a locked door, and that's when I understood why Mark had said I wasn't supposed to see those pictures, because once I recognized that man, everything about my marriage stopped making sense. That I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, that man's face flashed behind my eyelids. The same confident smile, the same way he leaned into her. It wasn't affection, it was possession. Like she belonged to him. By sunrise, I had already made a list. Not of suspicions, of facts. I needed to know who he was, why he was there, and why my wife had hidden it for years. When Emma woke up, I pretended nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek, said she had an early meeting, and left before finishing her coffee. Her phone buzzed on the counter, an unknown number with no name, just a single letter D. I didn't open it. Not yet. Before we dive deeper, if you enjoy true stories that twist in ways you never see coming, subscribe so you won't miss the next part. Things are about to get darker. Later that morning, I called Mark again. He was hesitant to talk, probably afraid I'd blame him, but I assured him I just wanted the truth. He told me something that made my blood run cold. The guy wasn't a guest. He came with the wedding coordinator. I remember because I had to ask who he was to keep my shot list clean. She said he was her assistant, but I never saw him help with anything. I remembered the coordinator, a woman named Lindsay. Efficient, polite, always by Emma's side that day. I hadn't thought about her in years. It felt strange to even picture her now. That afternoon, I started my own quiet investigation. I searched through my old wedding folder, invoices, vendor lists, emails. Lindsay's company was still active, small-town event planner, social media full of happy brides. But then I noticed something. A man in the background of multiple photos on her feed. Same build, same hair, same smile. The man from the wedding. My heart started racing. I zoomed in on one post, a photo taken just 2 months ago. There he was, standing beside Lindsay at another ceremony. And in the comments below, a familiar username. Emma's private account. Just a heart emoji. That single symbol felt louder than any confession that I couldn't confront her yet. I didn't want denials, I wanted certainty. So I called an old friend, Brian, who worked in tech support for a security company. I asked if he could help me recover old data, specifically wedding footage. He laughed, asked why, and I told him half the story. His voice got serious fast. Send me what you have. I'll see what I can do. A day later, he called back. Man, there's something weird, he said. Your wedding video, the official one? It was edited. There's a cut right before the cake scene. Looks like someone manually removed about 12 minutes of footage. I froze. 12 minutes. The same window the photos were taken. Brian sent me a preview file he'd recovered. Grainy, but enough. The missing footage showed a hallway behind the reception stage. I saw Emma there, alone at first, pacing, checking her phone. Then that man appeared. He put his hand on her arm. She looked up and smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile you fake for a camera. It was something older, deeper. They talked for a while. I couldn't hear them, but I saw her mouth a word that made me sick. His name. David. That name hit me like a hammer. David, her ex from college. The one she said had moved away for good. The one she swore was just a mistake. I felt my hands shake. Everything inside me screamed to confront her right then, but I didn't. Because now it wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity. That night, I set up a simple plan. When she came home, I asked about her day, smiled, cooked dinner. She seemed distant, not guilty, just distracted, like someone with two worlds to manage. When she went to take a shower, I checked her laptop. Nothing suspicious, she was careful. But in the browser history, one tab caught my eye. Property separation laws in case of divorce. My chest tightened. It wasn't paranoia anymore. She was preparing for something. I closed the laptop quietly before she returned. She kissed me on the forehead and said, "You're quiet tonight." I smiled. Just tired. But in that silence, I made a promise to myself. If my marriage started with a lie, it was going to end with the truth. For 3 nights, I barely slept. Every sound in the house made me tense. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge. It wasn't fear. It was focus. My wife slept peacefully next to me while I pieced together the truth in silence. I had the photos, the footage, and a name, David. Now I needed to know how deep this went, and how Lindsay, the wedding coordinator, fit into all of it. If he was her assistant, she had to know something. So I booked a consultation with her company under a fake name. New wedding plans, I said over the phone. My voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man pretending to plan a second wedding, while secretly digging through the ashes of his first. Her office was bright and polished, full of glossy photos and smiling brides. Lindsay looked almost the same as I remembered, a little older, but still sharp, professional. When I shook her hand, she didn't recognize me. Not immediately. Then her smile flickered, just for a second. "I'm planning a surprise vow renewal," I said smoothly. "My wife doesn't know. I want it perfect." Her professional tone returned instantly. "Of course. We love surprise events." As she flipped through her planner, I watched her eyes. She avoided looking directly at me for too long. My heart pounded, but I kept my smile in place. She asked the usual questions: venue, guest list, photographer. And that's when I slid the first test across the table. "I was thinking of hiring the same photographer we had last time," I said. "Mark." Her hand froze over the notebook. She hesitated just enough to notice. "Oh, Mark. I remember him. He was very talented." "Yeah," I said, holding her gaze. "He kept some of the old photos. Said they were special." Her smile cracked. Old photos. She asked. I leaned back. Yeah, some I never saw before. He thought I might like them. There it was, the smallest twitch at the corner of her mouth. Fear. Or guilt. Maybe both. That we finished the meeting, but I knew I had struck a nerve. As soon as I left, I parked my car across the street and waited. 10 minutes later, she came out, phone pressed to her ear, walking fast that I didn't need to hear her words. Her expression told me enough. Panic. She was calling someone. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of her plate. A few hours later, I asked my friend Brian to run it through a private search database. That evening, I got a message back. The car was registered to David Carter. She hadn't just worked with him. She was connected to him. I started digging deeper. Their event company had handled over a dozen weddings, and in at least 3 of them, the brides had one thing in common: high net worth husbands, short marriages, and sudden divorces. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. That night, I waited for Emma to fall asleep. I sat in the dark, scrolling through social media. Lindsay and David appeared together too often to ignore. Some posts were subtle: business events, client meetings. But the comments, they were personal. Inside jokes. Matching locations. One post chilled me the most. A picture of a champagne glass on a familiar marble counter. The caption read, "Full circle. Always worth the wait." That countertop belonged to my kitchen. I didn't remember that photo ever being taken. But I recognized the reflection in the glass. Emma's hair, tied back exactly how she wore it last week. My pulse pounded in my ears. I checked the timestamp. It was taken 3 days ago. For the first time, it wasn't just a suspicion. It was proof. But instead of rage, I felt something colder: control. The kind that comes when you finally stop reacting and start planning. I copied the photo, saved the URLs, took screenshots of their accounts, and backed up every message. Then I deleted my tracks. Emma shifted in bed and murmured my name. I turned off the laptop and whispered, "It's okay. Go back to sleep." Because tomorrow, she'd wake up to the same house, the same husband, but I wouldn't be the same man anymore. I had a plan now. And for once, the lies were working in my favor. The next morning, everything felt louder. The kettle hissed longer. Her footsteps echoed sharper. Even her silence seemed heavier. Emma hummed softly while she made coffee. That same tune she always hummed when she was lying. I watched her, pretending to scroll through my phone, my mind racing through every file, every image I had saved. She looked perfect, calm, ordinary. But now I knew better. The perfection was rehearsed. I had decided I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted her to show her cards. So I designed a test. After she left for work, I sent her a short text. "We should do something special this weekend. Maybe a getaway." Her reply came within seconds. "That sounds amazing. I'll check my schedule." Too quick. Too smooth. I already knew she'd say that. The thing was, I hadn't planned any trip. Not yet. The destination would be the bait. Before we go further, if you like stories where truth hides in plain sight and revenge isn't about anger, but precision, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. That evening, over dinner, I brought it up again. "How about we go to that lake house? The one we rented before our wedding." Her fork paused midair. That lake house was the same place where she and I had our pre-wedding photo shoot. The one David was supposedly never part of. "Oh, that place," she said, her voice a little too casual. "Yeah, sure. That'd be nice." I smiled. "Great. I'll text Mark. Maybe he can come by. I owe him a drink for all those memories." Her expression didn't change, but the sparkle in her eyes dimmed just slightly. She laughed it off, stood up, and started clearing plates. But her hands were tense. I could see the faint tremor in her fingers as she reached for the dishes. Later that night, when she went to shower, I slipped into the living room and set up a small voice recorder under the couch cushion. It wasn't illegal. We lived in a one-party consent state, and I needed the truth, not just my suspicions. When she came out, her hair still wet, she sat on the couch and called someone. Her voice was soft, secretive, the voice she used when she thought I was asleep. "I think he knows," she whispered at a man's voice, muffled but clear enough. Answered, "Stay calm. He's bluffing." My heart stopped. It was him. "David?" "I don't think so," she said. "He mentioned Mark, the photographer." "Then we need to move faster," he said. "Don't panic." I almost dropped my phone. The calm in David's tone, it wasn't guilt. It was strategy. I stayed perfectly still until she hung up, then waited another 20 minutes before turning off the recorder. The next morning, I transferred the file to my laptop and saved it under a coded name. I listened to it 3 times. Each replay felt like a needle under my skin. But in between their whispers, I caught something new, something they didn't mean to reveal. David said, "He doesn't know about the papers yet." Papers. I opened our home office cabinet and started looking through the drawers. One by one. Bills, tax returns, travel receipts. Nothing unusual. Until I found a manila envelope labeled legal in her handwriting. Inside were printed drafts and signed, but clear enough to make my blood freeze. Preliminary divorce agreements. Property transfer clauses. Dates filled in pencil. Last week. She wasn't planning to confess. She was planning to cash out, and suddenly, everything, the smiles, the gentle touches, the reassurances, became part of the same performance. That night, I didn't sleep beside her. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting her breaths as she slept peacefully beside me. Like someone rehearsing a role she thought she'd already by dawn, I had a new planned no confrontation. No shouting. I was going to let her believe she still controlled the game. Until the moment I flipped the script completely. I picked up my phone, opened a new message, and typed, "Lindsay, it's about the Carter wedding project. We need to talk, privately." I smiled. If she wanted to play professional, I could play along. But this time, I was the one writing the ending. When Lindsay agreed to meet, she probably thought it was business. She had no idea I already knew more about her than she expected. I chose a quiet cafe downtown, neutral ground, full of people. A place where truth would have to stay civilized. She arrived 10 minutes late, sunglasses on, scanning the room like she was checking for someone else. When she saw me, she hesitated before smiling. "Mr. Miller, right? You said it's about a project?" "Yeah," I said. "A very personal one." We sat. I ordered black coffee. She didn't touch her drink. Her posture was perfect, polished, controlled. That kind of calm that only comes from lying for a living. "I'm planning something special," I began. "But before I can, I need to ask you a few things about an old event." Her shoulders stiffened. "What kind of event?" "My wedding." That single word made her freeze. She hit it well, just a tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth, but I saw it. Years of organizing weddings probably taught her how to mask emotion, but not from someone who's already seen the cracks. "I'm revisiting some memories," I continued. "Mark showed me the raw photos. You remember Mark, right?" She nodded, eyes darting away for just a second. "Of course. Great photographer." "Yeah," I said. "He had a good eye?" "Sometimes he caught things people weren't meant to see." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "Oh, I think you do," I said softly. "Like how an uninvited guest ended up behind my wife in 3 different shots. Or how you called him your assistant. Funny thing, I found out he's registered as your business partner now. David Carter." That name hit her like a slap. She blinked once, slowly, then leaned forward and whispered, "What do you want?" I smiled. "The truth. Off the record." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she sighed. That kind of exhale you make when the weight of keeping secrets finally gets too heavy. "Look," she began quietly. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. David was helping with logistics, and Emma. She made choices. I told her to end it before the ceremony, but she didn't. She said she could keep both, the stability of marriage and the thrill of what she had with him." I stayed silent. Let her fill the space. "She told me she didn't love you," Lindsay continued. "She said you were the safe option. David was the real thing. But when he left town, she panicked. When he came back, she stopped herself, looked around, lowered her voice again. They reconnected. I tried to cut ties with both of them after the wedding. But you can't just erase people like that." The way she said it told me everything. She wasn't confessing out of guilt. She was afraid. "What about the papers?" I asked. Her head snapped up. "You know about those?" "Enough." She looked down at her untouched coffee. "Then you know she's planning to leave." She wanted me to coordinate a private mediation. "It's not just a divorce. There's money involved." "A lot." "Money?" I asked. Lindsay nodded. "Your house, your business, the investments." She's been setting things up quietly for months. David helped her create accounts offshore. I only know because she used one of my company's legal contacts. I felt the ground shift under me, but I didn't show it. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. "Because she's going to burn everyone when it's over." "Including me," she said. And because you're not like her, you actually believed it meant something. For a second, her professional mask slipped. I saw guilt, maybe even pity. I leaned closer, my tone steady but cold. You helped her build this lie. So now, you're going to help me end it. Lindsay didn't argue. She just nodded, quietly, like someone who finally realized the game was ending. I'll need everything, I said. Emails, contracts, bank details. You send me what you have, and your name stays clean. She swallowed hard. You're not going to? No, I interrupted. I'm not here to ruin lives. I'm here to expose the truth, and you're going to help me do it. As I stood to leave, she finally whispered, You have no idea who you're up against. I looked down at her, calm and unshaken. Neither does she. I walked out into the sunlight feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. The kind that comes when you know the storm is coming, but this time, you're the one steering it. That night, I checked my email. One message waited in my inbox. Subject, You didn't hear this from me. Attached were over 20 documents. Bank transfers, invoices, legal drafts, all leading to one account name. David Carter, and one more. Co-holder, Emma Miller. When I opened the files Lindsay sent, I realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was architecture. Every transaction, every paper, every signature had been placed perfectly, like bricks in a quiet little fortress built around my own ignorance. Emma hadn't just cheated. She'd planned my financial funeral. The documents traced everything, money transferred under fake invoices, business consulting, payments to David, and a shared account hidden beneath an offshore shell company. The name on the folder said it all, ED Holdings. Emma and David. That night, I sat in my home office staring at the wall, the faint glow of my laptop the only light in the room. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt something cleaner, focused that I wasn't going to scream, beg, or break things. I was going to dismantle her world one quiet move at a time. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I copied the documents to a flash drive and hid it inside a sealed box of spare printer ink, something no one ever touches. I started backing up our bank records, emails, and tax returns. Each new piece fit perfectly into a picture that was becoming painfully clear. Emma had been preparing to walk away with everything, while I was planning anniversaries, but I still needed her to trust me. So I played the part perfectly. That evening, over dinner, I told her I'd taken some time off work. You've been so busy lately, I said. I figured we could spend a weekend together before the holidays. Her eyes lit up, cautious but interested. You mean, like a trip? Yeah, somewhere quiet, I said. No work, no distractions. She smiled, that rehearsed smile she'd used 1,000 times before. That sounds wonderful. Inside, I could almost hear the click of the trap setting itself. Before we continue, if you love stories where revenge is cold, precise, and completely legal, subscribe so you won't miss how this ends. Because trust me, it's just getting good. That night, when she fell asleep, I started preparing. I reached out to a lawyer, a discreet one, recommended by Brian, and explained the situation. He didn't even blink. You'll need to document everything, he said. Once she makes her move, we'll file first. No surprises. Can we freeze joint assets? I asked. If you can prove intent, he replied. And with what you've got? Oh, she's done. The next step was trickier. I had to lure David out. I knew he was smart, careful enough to stay in the shadows. But greed makes people sloppy. Using a new email account, I posed as Lindsay. I wrote, the client's husband is getting suspicious. He might sell the property early. We should move funds before he does. Let's meet, same place as before. I hit send, heart pounding. If he responded, I'd know where and when. 2 hours later, I got the reply. Tomorrow, 9 p.m., Lakeside Hotel. Bring everything. Perfect. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same hotel Emma and I had stayed in on our honeymoon. The next day, I drove there early. I wasn't there to confront them. Not yet. I was there to watch. I checked into a room across from the main entrance, ordered black coffee, and waited by the window at the T907. A silver SUV pulled up. David stepped out, looking exactly as he had in those cursed photos. Confident, polished, untouchable. A few minutes later, Emma's car arrived. She looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder before walking inside. They met in the lobby, hugged briefly. Not like lovers, more like partners sealing a deal. They disappeared into a private conference room. From my room, I watched through the reflection in a glass partition. I couldn't hear the words, but their gestures told the story. Counting, signing, exchanging something that looked like a USB drive. My pulse stayed steady. I recorded everything. Timestamps, photos, video. Proof. When they finally left an hour later, I waited until their cars were gone. Then I went downstairs, straight to the front desk. I showed the manager my ID and told him I'd left something in the conference room. He let me in, assuming I'd just forgotten a folder. Inside, the smell of her perfume still lingered, sharp, expensive, familiar. On the table, one thing remained. A single printed page. It was an account summary, ED Holdings. Balance, $2.40 million. I smiled for the first time in days. Now I had everything I needed, the motive, the evidence, and their arrogance. When I drove home that night, I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, almost peaceful, because the next move was mine, and it was going to be silent, surgical, and entirely within the law. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, cutting sharp lines across the floor. I hadn't really slept, not because of nerves, but anticipation. The plan was finally in motion, and every detail had to be perfect. Emma still believed I was the clueless husband. That was her first mistake. She came into the kitchen wearing her usual calm, soft smile, cup of coffee, that distant warmth of someone who's already living a double life. I matched her perfectly, played my role to the letter. "Did you sleep?" she asked, glancing at me over the rim of her mug, like a rock. I lied, flipping a page of the newspaper. "Big day ahead. Something at work?" "Something like that." She smiled faintly. "Good. You've been distracted lately." Inside, I almost laughed. She had no idea how right she was. After she left for her meeting, I opened my laptop and logged into a private banking portal, the one connected to our joint investments. Over the last few weeks, Emma had funneled small amounts through consulting fees, but now, thanks to the lawyer, I had control again. I initiated a quiet audit freeze. Any movement from her side would now require my digital signature. Step 1. Containment. Next, I scheduled an automatic alert to my attorney if any funds were moved without authorization. It wasn't revenge yet. It was insurance. Before we continue, if you're into stories where revenge doesn't shout, it whispers and watches until the perfect moment, subscribe. Because what's coming next isn't rage, it's strategy. By mid-afternoon, Lindsay sent a message. "They're nervous. David's pushing to finalize this week." Perfect. That meant they were rushing, and rushing people make mistakes. I texted back. "Keep them calm. Tell them I agreed to sign the property release after the weekend." Lindsay replied with a single word, "Done." I called Brian next. He'd set up a secure recording system linked to my laptop's webcam and the home Wi-Fi. Every call, every email, every device connected to our network would be logged. It was completely legal and invisible. That night, Emma came home late. Too late for work. I didn't ask questions. I just handed her a glass of wine and said, "You've been working hard. I made dinner." She looked surprised, maybe even guilty. "You didn't have to. I wanted to," I interrupted, smiling. "You deserve it." We ate in silence. I watched every flicker in her expression, every pause between bites. When she excused herself to make a phone call, I gave her space, on purpose. I knew she'd take the bait. 15 minutes later, I heard the faint sound of her voice from the patio. Calm, rehearsed, intimate. "It's fine," she whispered. "He's still clueless. After this weekend, everything's done." I recorded every word through the system Brian had installed. It wasn't about humiliating her. It was about proof, the kind that doesn't crumble in court. The next morning, I sent my lawyer a single file, audio_confidential.mp3. He called me within an hour. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "I want her to see everything fall apart first." He paused. "You're playing a dangerous game, Miller." "Not dangerous," I corrected. "Precise." That evening, I began the final phase, a mirror account. With Brian's help, we duplicated the ED Holdings structure, matching every transfer, every record. Then we triggered a system notification that would send Emma an alert, making it look like their hidden account had been flagged by the bank. By midnight, she saw it. Her phone buzzed twice, and she went pale. I pretended to be half asleep when she stumbled into the room, pacing, whispering to herself. The panic in her voice was almost satisfying. "How?" How did they find it? She dialed David. You said it was untraceable. I could hear him through the speaker, frustrated, confused. It is. Someone must have tipped them off. She froze. Do you think? Lindsay. That's when I knew I had them turning on each other that I rolled over, feigning drowsiness. Everything okay? She flinched. Yeah. Work stuff. Go back to sleep. Sure. I mumbled, eyes still closed. But I was wide awake, listening to every breath she took, every nervous shuffle. By the time she finally lay down, her pulse was racing to in less than 48 hours. Everything she'd built would start collapsing, one signature at a time. And the best part? She'd think it was just bad luck. That'd be why the next morning, the atmosphere in the house felt brittle. Every sound, every glance carried tension. Emma looked perfect as always, hairstyled, perfume sharp, her voice light and measured, but her hands gave her away. They shook slightly as she stirred her coffee. You okay? I asked. She smiled, too quickly. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Because, I thought, your little empire just started to crack. After she left for work, I sat at my desk and began the final setup. The mirror account Brian had built wasn't just a copy, it was bait. It led to a controlled portal we'd prepared, filled with every traceable record of their fraud, plus one extra file titled Final Statement, Client Copy. The file contained everything, transactions, names, even voice samples. When David or Emma tried to access it, the system would send a silent ping to both my lawyer and the state financial bureau's flag fraud server. No crime had been committed on my end. I was merely preserving evidence. Step 1 had worked. Step 2 was exposure. Before we continue, if you like revenge stories that twist reality without breaking the rules, subscribe. Because what happens next is proof that the truth doesn't need violence to destroy someone. It just needs timing. That evening, I told Emma we were invited to a charity gala for my company. It was believable, formal enough to make her drop her guard. She smiled, relieved even, and agreed to come. I could use a night to unwind, she said. She had no idea that the gala was my final stage. The event was real, an annual corporate dinner at a downtown venue. But I'd arranged for a small, private presentation to be shown before the main ceremony. Something I told the organizers was a tribute video celebrating our firm's success. In reality, it was footage Brian had edited together, quiet, factual, irrefutable. I arrived early to ensure everything was ready. My attorney sat discreetly at a back table. The room shimmered with polished glasses, soft jazz, and laughter, the perfect stage for truth disguised as elegance. Emma arrived half an hour later, radiant as ever. She wore the same perfume from our wedding day. She greeted everyone with that practiced charm that had fooled even me once. When she reached me, I smiled, kissed her cheek, and said, "Tonight's special." She grinned. "You're finally in a good mood." "Yeah," I said softly. "Feels like everything's finally coming together." Dinner went smoothly. Toasts were made, laughter filled the room, until the lights dimmed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, a short video prepared by Mr. Miller, celebrating trust and partnership. I saw her glance at me, touched. "That's sweet," she whispered. Then the screen came to life. It began with music, calm, nostalgic, then shifted to the footage from the wedding. The same photos Mark had shown me. Emma froze. Her fork slipped from her hand, hitting the plate with a sharp clang. The crowd murmured. Then came the timeline, documents, wire transfers, names. Her name, David's. The audio clip of her whispering, "He's still clueless." After this weekend, everything's done. The silence that followed was suffocating. Her face drained of color. "What is this?" she gasped. "Evidence," I said quietly, never raising my voice. "Everything you built on lies." She stood, trembling. "You can't. You don't understand." But she stopped when the host, confused, announced, "Mr. Miller, your counsel asked that you join him outside." It was already in motion. The video wasn't just for her. It had already been uploaded, privately shared with the legal and financial boards. She wasn't being humiliated for show. She was being exposed in real time. Emma tried to leave, but the lawyer met her halfway. "Mrs. Miller, we'll need you to come with us." There was no yelling, no chaos. Just the quiet fall of a mask that had been worn too long that I didn't stay to watch the rest. I walked out into the cold night air, exhaling years of denial. My hands were steady. My heart, strangely calmed as I stood by the car. Lindsay texted one final message. It's done. David's gone off the grid. She's on her own now. I replied, good. She always was. I got into the car and started the engine. For the first time in years, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving towards something. Peace. The following morning, the world felt eerily quiet. I woke up in a hotel room, the kind of silence that only comes after something irreversible. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, emails, calls. I didn't answer any of them. The night before had already spoken louder than I ever could. By noon, the story had started to spread, not to the public, but within the circles that mattered. Investors, partners, family. Emma's name was being whispered everywhere, attached to words like fraud and deception. The truth had done its job, but something was still missing, the part that kept scratching at the back of my mind like a splinter. Because even after all of it, the lies, the evidence, the exposure, I couldn't shake one thought. None of this had started by accident. It was too elaborate, too precise. Someone had designed it. Before we go further, if you love true revenge stories that dig deeper than betrayal, subscribe. Because what I found next didn't just change my marriage, it changed the story itself. That afternoon, my lawyer called. She's cooperating, he said. Admitted to everything, the fake accounts, the transfers. But she said something strange. What? She claims it wasn't her idea. I sat up. Whose then? She said she was approached before the wedding. Someone promised to set her up for life if she followed a plan. She wouldn't give a name, but she said the plan was called the Carter contract. The name hit me like a punch. Carter, I said quietly. As in David Carter? That's what we thought, the lawyer replied. But there's more. The account names, the companies, they trace back years before your wedding. Before she even met him again. I went silent. After the call, I sat staring at the window, piecing it together. David wasn't the architect. He was just another pawn. Maybe even her handler, not the mastermind. Someone else had designed the blueprint. Someone who'd used both of them. I dug back into Lindsay's files. Buried among her invoices, one document stood out. An old client list, half redacted. Near the bottom, I saw the name Carter Events Group LLC. Registered long before my wedding, under an unfamiliar owner. Michael Carter, David's older brother. I remembered meeting him once, briefly. During a charity event, Emma dragged me to a year before our wedding. Charming, older, the kind of man who could make people believe anything. He'd congratulated us, told me I was a lucky man marrying such a beautiful woman. Now it all made sense. The plan had never been about love. It was a system targeting wealthy clients, using wedding consulting as the perfect front. They'd groom brides-to-be, push them toward profitable marriages, then stage divorces designed to funnel assets into shell companies. Emma hadn't built the trap. She'd walked into it, and I'd just been one of many marks. For a moment, I didn't feel anger, just disbelief at the precision, how clean it all was, how deeply the deception ran. That night, my lawyer called again. We've traced Carter's group, he said. They're under federal review now. Someone leaked the files to investigators before we even got to them. Someone. I asked. He paused. A woman. No name, but the email address was familiar. It matches Lindsay's system ID. Lindsay. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. I told you, she said, voice trembling. You didn't know who you were up against. But you weren't the only one he used. He ruined people, made them complicit, trapped them in debt. I wasn't clean in this, but I wasn't staying silent anymore. I exhaled. You leaked everything. I made sure it couldn't be buried, she said. You wanted the truth. Now everyone gets it. That night, I turned on the news. Authorities have begun an investigation into Carter Events Group, the anchor said. Dozens of fraudulent marriages, identity manipulation, and offshore laundering schemes have surfaced. And there she was, Emma, escorted out of a courthouse, silent, eyes empty. For a split second, I thought she looked at the camera, like she knew I'd be watching. No rage, no tears. Just recognition. The end of a game neither of us truly understood until it was over. I turned off the TV and stared at my reflection in the dark window. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. I'd lost the marriage, the illusion, but I'd kept my sanity, my dignity, and surprisingly, my peace. Because the real revenge wasn't ruining her. It was surviving her. 2 weeks after everything fell apart, The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It was quiet, finally honest. No secrets, no lies echoing off the walls. I stood in the empty kitchen, the same place where she used to hum in the mornings, and realized that silence could be the most peaceful sound in the world. The investigation into the Carter network exploded fast. News outlets picked it up, and soon half the city knew about the web of fake contracts and manipulated marriages. My name, however, never appeared. My lawyer made sure of that. I wasn't a victim in the story. I was the one who exposed it. Emma took a plea deal. She testified against the Carters in exchange for leniency. The irony? She ended up saving herself by helping me finish what I started. Last I heard, she left the country to start over. I didn't wish her harm. I just hoped she'd finally face a life without lies to hide behind. David vanished, of course. People like him always do. But his empire was gone, every shell company dismantled, every stolen cent accounted for. The system he and his brother built, the same one that used people like chess pieces, was erased, piece by piece, by the truth. And me? I didn't fall apart. I didn't drown in bitterness. I rebuilt that. I sold the house, kept the evidence sealed away in a private archive, and moved to a coastal town 3 states away. Small place, quiet, the kind where people still say hello in the street. I opened a consulting business. Ironic, I know, but this time, my contracts were built on transparency, not deceit. Sometimes, I still get messages from people who read about the case, thanking me for speaking up. But the truth is, I didn't do it for fame or pity. I did it because pretending everything was fine had become a slow kind of death. The best revenge, I learned, isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. One evening, months later, I sat by the ocean, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. The sky was on fire, gold and crimson. My phone buzzed, an email from Lindsay. "You were right," she wrote. The truth was the only weapon that mattered. I smiled, closed my phone, took a deep breath, because that was it. No more lies, no more schemes, no more pretending. Just peace. And if you've ever been betrayed, you know what that peace feels like. Not loud, not triumphant, but steady, solid. It's the moment you stop being part of someone else's story and start writing your own again. So, what do you think? Did I do the right thing? What would you have done in my place? If you want to hear more true stories like this, stories about revenge, truth, and second chances, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Hit like if this story kept you hooked, and drop a comment below. I read every single one. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come from anger. It comes from finally walking away and never looking back. The end.